Hey, welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be installing upper control arms on our Jeep Liberty from JBA. They are custom upper control arms that you put on your Jeep Liberty. They actually sell them for Tacomas, Dodges, all sorts of other vehicles. So check out their website, jbaoffroad.com. But today, we'll be putting those upper control arms from JBA on the 2003 Jeep Liberty. First, we'll pull the Jeep into the garage. We'll jack the front of the Jeep up and support the front with some jack stands. Then we'll remove the front wheels and tires. Before that, check this out. I have confidence the new upper control arm from JBA is going to fix this issue. Look at this upper control here. Look how nasty it is on top of that strut. It's touching. When the Jeep is at full droop, you got a lot of that going on. Now that we have the Jeep Liberty jacked up and supported on jack stands, we can start by removing the front sway bar bolts on the lower control arms. And we'll start on the driver's side. The driver's side is noted to be a little bit more difficult, so let's start with the difficult side first. Now that we got the front wheel off, we can remove the brake caliper. We can support it using a bungee cord and just get it out of the way for the next step. While we're in there, on my Jeep, we're going to be replacing the outer tie rod ends. As you can tell, you can see that we could use some new tie rod ends. Now we can start removing the upper control arm on the Jeep. First off, we need to start by removing that nut on the upper ball joint and removing the upper ball joint from the knuckle of the Jeep. After removing that upper ball joint, we can now focus on getting the two bolts that hold the upper control arm. Doing so, we need to go under the hood of the Jeep and remove the battery tray of the Jeep. But first, we remove the battery. We'll remove the battery tray. The battery tray is supported by 3 bolts. Now that we got the battery tray out of the way, we can see the 2 bolts that we need to remove for the upper control arm. Well, the rumors are true. That upper control arm bolt on that driver's side just snapped my swivel. And I still don't have it out. Thank you. And this is the reason why we did the driver's side first, because the driver's side is a little bit more tricky due to the steering components and the brake components that are in our way. So we have to make a long extension so we can get through the front of the Jeep all the way to the back of the back bolt on the upper control arm. Victory! We got her out. Now that we got the upper control arm out, which it wasn't an easy task, we got those 2 bolts out. We removed the upper control And now we need to clean the pockets where the upper control sat up in the subframe. So we'll clean those brackets out using an angle grinder to make room for the new upper control arms. Now that we got those pockets cleaned out, we can focus on putting the new upper control arms in. This part will be fun. Time to unbox the JBA upper controls. I knew I'd like this company just from all the testimonies I've seen with you guys running these JBA uppers on your Liberties, and I think I like the company even more now, knowing that they give you this nice upper control lifetime warranty certificate and something else pretty powerful. Check out the comparison between the old factory upper control arm and the new one from JBA. Whoa. It is so much shinier. And a replaceable upper ball joint, which you can't do on the factory one. Also, you can replace the bushings, which also you can't do on these guys, but you can replace the bushings. Greasable, non-greasable, greasable, non-greasable. Plus these are much thicker. When you order the JBA upper controls for the KJ Liberty, they are symmetrical. Therefore, both A-arms are the same, so there will be no passenger side or no driver's side because they're the same. Now let's put this beautiful piece in its new home. JBA offers some grease, so you can grease those bushings to put those upper control arms in. You can also use a soft mallet to hammer those in. Using a soft mallet and some grease, you can hammer those upper control arms in, which isn't very easy. Once you get the bolts in, now you can tighten those upper control arm bolts to 90 foot-pounds. From there, the installation is pretty easy. Put the battery tray back on. We'll put the battery back in, and now we can put the knuckle back onto the new ball joint of JBA and put the brake caliper back on, and now we can install the new tie rod in. From there, we can tighten the upper ball joint. Tighten that nut to 60 foot-pounds. Moving to the passenger side. This side should be a little bit easier, as we only have to remove the air cleaner and the air cleaner box and the cruise controller module out of the way to access the two bolts to the upper control arm. So we'll remove the air box, just 3 grommets, the box pops right off. Now we can access those two bolts. Now we'll go back underneath. We'll just do the same thing as we did the driver's side, as far as removing the brake caliper, removing the upper ball joint on the control arm. Now we can remove the upper 2 bolts on that control arm to replace it with the new upper control arm from JBA. Once we have both upper control arms installed, we can now grease the new ball joint with greasable ball joints. So we'll grease those. And also now we can grease the 2 bushings on the upper control arm as well. We're gonna grease the upper control greasers with the recommended grease from JBA. I'll put the link in the description below on these parts that I ordered from Amazon. Once we've greased the new control arms, we can now reinstall the wheels and tires. Now that we got the wheels and tires installed, we can take the jack stands off the Jeep. Once we get the Jeep off the jack stands, we can now drive the Jeep. It's highly recommended that you take it to your local alignment shop and get your Jeep aligned after installing the upper control arms. The alignment shop will be able to correct the camber on the Jeep to the correct camber and also the caster. The Jeep will drive much better after you have the lift in and then installing the upper control arms from JBA. Now for my final thoughts. The new upper control arms are legit. Those are made out of tubular material, which is much stronger. And now you have new bushings that you can grease and an upper control arm that you can replace as well and also grease. So the new upper control arms are now serviceable, as the older upper control arms were not. If you wanted a new ball joint or if you had bad bushings, you would have to replace that whole arm. Now the new ones are serviceable. Also, after you lift your Liberty, as you saw earlier in the video, now your upper control arm geometry is much better with the new JBA upper control arms and not resting on the strut anymore while the suspension is suspended. And as far as the install wouldn't have been that bad if you could access those upper control arm bolts a little bit easier on that driver's side. And they were just so tight. As you saw in the video, it broke my swivel on my 3/8 swivel. Finally remove the upper control arm bolt all the way back on that driver's side. I had to use a 1/2 inch swivel and long extension and a 1/2 inch ratchet to break that loose because it was so tight. If it wasn't for those bolts, the install would have gone much smoother. It was worth the battle to remove those bolts and to put those new upper control arms in, because we are going to be much happier with those new control arms from JBA. As always, thanks for watching, and until next time.